Hello, welcome back. Today it's all about demonstrations. That's right, we have maps, miniatures, dice. We have the whiteboard, we have the whiteboard marker and the eraser. We have the battle pad. Yes, we have it all. It's ready to go, and I'm going to do some demonstration on a game system, D&D 5e. You might have heard of it. Look, I'm going to make it quite clear now that I don't plan to run these that often, for those of you who are wondering. So definitely make use of them while I'm doing them. Okay, I'm putting up a poll. Feel free to take part in that poll. My suggestion is have your questions ready. If you have questions, by all means, have them ready. Put them into the chat right now. I'm going to do a presentation. I have a slideshow. It's very short. Okay, I know it says complex combat mechanics, but it's actually quite short. I've done that quite deliberately to make sure that complex combat mechanics does not turn into I can't understand anything. Okay, so make sure you have some food, some drink. Make sure you have your questions ready. I'll do the slideshow first, then I'll open it up to questions. I'll go through the questions. I'll try to demonstrate everything, okay, today, provided the questions allow, and we'll see how we go from there. So, slideshow, questions, using the demonstration, using the battle grid, because I think that's kind of more useful to people. I know there's some people who don't speak English as a first language, and I suppose you could count myself, but I know it's easier if you can actually see it being done, so I understand that. Okay, let's get started. Hi, welcome to How to RPG. My name is Fred Wheeler, and today I want to talk about complex combat mechanics for Dungeons & Dragons 5e. Correct, Dungeons & Dragons 5e rules. This is Lesson 3, Complex Combat Mechanics. For those of you who need a bit of assistance around that, so what are we covering today? Well, I'm covering hiding, or the hide action in combat. What is the ready action in battle, and sort of what that would look like? How does grapple work in a fight? How does a shove, how is it different from the grapple? Cover. There are 3 different types of cover. I'm going to explain all of them today. Death saving throws for characters. And to a large degree, we'll probably also be covering the death saving throw for a non-player character or a monster, how death works. Miscellaneous recommendations, because I always do. And I know what you're thinking, Fred, where is the opportunity attack or the attack of opportunity? I will explain more later. Objectives. Explain how to use the complex combat mechanics in your game for Dungeons & Dragons 5e. Hide, ready, grapple, shove, cover, death saving throws, and anything else really that you need. Demonstrate that process. I'm going to do some demonstration, and I want you to have some practice sort of working with this, so by all means throw out your questions and I will do my best to respond to them. Let's start at the beginning. Probably the most contentious action I can think of over the 10 years I've been answering questions on it, and that is the hide action and hiding. So the hide action requires you use your main action as either a character or a monster, unless you have a special ability. And it can be, essentially, you're trying to be unseen from a foe. You could also consider it being unheard or unsmelt from a foe, but generally it's unseen, okay? And you're going to make a dexterity stealth check. And this dexterity stealth check can only really be performed generally if you have something to hide in or something to hide behind. It has to obscure you in some way for this hide action to work in a battle. Outside of a battle, it's going to look a little bit different. So that is the hide action. And generally, you're not going to be using it unless you are a rogue. Next, we have the readied action or ready action. The ready action requires that you use your main action for your character or your monster, but it will actually be activated as a reaction on somebody else's turn. Okay, this reaction is stipulated. You actually have to stipulate when you take the ready action, you have to stipulate the trigger that will have whatever action you use or movement that you perform. Okay, you need to do that, and you do that first. And then when the trigger is activated, you use your reaction on somebody else's turn to do that. Now, that might be cast a spell. You could ready an action to cast a spell if you see an enemy come into view, or fire a bow if an enemy comes into view, or they make an attack against somebody else. Okay, often this is going to work only until your next turn. Once your next turn comes, you lose your readied action. And that's the readied action. Now, I've simplified it, but it is very, very complicated. Just like the hide action, the readied action is very, very complicated. I can't break down every single thing unless you may actually ask specific questions. Grapple. How does grapple work? Grapple is a special melee attack that stops a creature from moving. That's essentially all it's designed for, to stop them from moving around, stop their speed. It is a contest between an athletics check or a strength check. You can only use an athletics check or a strength check to initiate a grapple. And you must succeed against the target creatures or opponents' strength athletics check, or they can use a dexterity acrobatics check to resist that hold. The idea being is you must always get greater than, you cannot get equal to. You have to beat them. If you get equal to, nothing happens. And you can only ever initiate it with a strength or athletics check. But you can resist it with a strength athletics check or a dexterity acrobatics check. And it's part of it. So if you have multiple attacks, right, if you have the attack action and you can make more than one attack, you could use all three, say 2 attacks or 3 attacks. You can use all of those attacks to make grapple attempts if you want to. Or you could just use one of them and the rest can be attacks. You have to structure it the way that you think it's going to work. So that is the grapple. It's to stop movement. Next is the shove action, which is kind of like an extension of the grapple. It is also a special melee attack. And it is you're going to be using your, now I'm not going to say it's going to use your main action, because you've got to understand that shove and grapple, as I said, they're certainly part of making an attack. But if you have multiple attacks, you can shove multiple targets and you can grapple multiple targets potentially too, as long as you have enough hands free. So shove is a special attack that either knocks a creature prone on the ground, so they're flat on their face or on their back, or pushes that creature 5 feet away. It is a contest between your strength athletics check, okay? It can only be a strength athletics check, and you need to succeed against the target creature's strength athletics check or dexterity acrobatics check to resist that force of being knocked over or pushed back. And again, if you have multiple attacks, you can shove multiple targets. There is a limit to how big. There are limits to how big you can grapple a creature. You know, if a creature is bigger than large and you're medium size, you can't grapple a huge creature. The same with shove. There is some restrictions on that. So those are the grapple and the shove. Cover. Many people don't actually use the cover rules in D&D 5e. Just because it's an extra added layer of complexity they don't need. But here's how it works. Cover can make it more difficult for your attacks or somebody's attacks or their spells that have an attack effect to affect your character or the monsters. So you're trying to make it harder to hit your character or your monsters by using cover. Now, half cover grants you a +2 bonus to armor class, and you get a +2 bonus to your dexterity saving throw as well. So when you ever have to make a dexterity saving throw and you have half cover, okay, you get a +2 to that dice roll as part of your bonus. Now, what is half cover? Half cover means that at least half of your body is covered by some sort of terrain feature for it to be actually half cover. 3/4 cover grants you a +5 bonus to your armor class, or a +5 bonus to your dexterity saving throw. And what is 3/4 cover? It's just what it sounds like. If at least 3/4 of your body has been covered, you are granted 3/4 cover, which is a +5. If it's not, then it's not 3/4 cover. The last type of cover in Dungeons & Dragons 5e is total cover. This means that the creature can't actually be targeted by a spell or an attack, okay, because you can't see any part of that target. The creature is completely obscured. There is nothing to see. You have like a brick wall in front of you or a door, and it covers your body completely. Now, there are some things that can hit a creature that is in total cover. Things like area effect spells or area effect attacks may be able to do so, particularly if they can go around corners. Okay, if you're hiding behind a wall and it's dropped sort of right on the edge of the wall, you might be affected by something like this. Okay, but usually things like that will stipulate that they ignore cover, and you then work with that from there. I know that's a little bit confusing, but total cover usually means you just can't be attacked. The last thing I want to talk about is the death saving throw. Unfortunately, the death saving throw is confusing to a lot of people because it says saving throw, and a death saving throw is not like all of the other saving throws in Dungeons & Dragons 5e. It is not a strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, or charisma saving throw. It's a very different thing. Mathematically, it works different. So what do? So you do this and you perform this at the start of your character's turn. Usually it doesn't apply to monsters. A death saving throw can apply to a monster or an NPC run by the dungeon master, but most of them don't. It takes place at the start of your turn, which means that you still have your action, okay? You still have your movement, and you still have your bonus action and interaction to use if you wind up able to stand up, or at least wind up with some hit points at the end of that death saving throw. So always remember, if you perform it, it's at the beginning of your turn, not at the end of your turn. You do not lose your turn in any way. Now, if they have 0 hit points, this is where you're going to do your death saving throw. And you need to have 0 hit points and not be dead. So if you've been instantly killed by an attack or a spell, then you won't be making a death saving throw. And what you do is you just roll 1 20-sided dice. Now, if you roll a 10 or higher, this counts as 1 successful death saving throw. If you roll a 9 or less, that counts as a failure. Okay, 1 failure against your death saving throw. But if you roll a 1 on the 20-sided dice, that actually counts as 2 failures. So that means that a failure is really 9 to 2 for 1 failure, and 2 failures is if you roll a 1. If you roll a 20, so that means that 10 to 19 is a success. A 20 is an extreme success. You gain 1 hit point if you roll a 20 on your 20-sided dice. Now, as you're tracking, you should be tracking and recording these failures and successes towards your death saving throw. If you wind up rolling a 20 on your 20-sided dice and you wind up with 1 hit point, you are no longer dying. You no longer are required to make death saving throws. So stop. What you do is you track how many failures and successes you get, and the cumulative success, okay? So if you get 3 cumulative successes on your death saving throws, you stabilize your character. You are no longer dying, but you won't rise up above 0 hit points unless you have between 1 and 4 hours pass. You roll a 4-sided dice to determine this. The only other way to wind up going from being stable and unconscious but not able to do anything is to have somebody use some sort of healing on you. Usually it's magical. If you get 3 cumulative failures resulting, then unfortunately your character is dead as a doorknob, and the only way to get your character back in the game is really to use some sort of resurrection magic. So you do not need to have them successive cumulative successes or successive cumulative failures. As soon as you get 3 successes, you stabilize. As soon as you get 3 failures, you're dead. So they do not have to be in an order in any way whatsoever. That's not required at all. That is the basics of your complex combat mechanics. Now, I know somebody is going to ask me a question. This is always sort of comes up because I know I've done this for 10 years now, answering questions. Opportunity attacks. the attack of opportunity, whatever the heck you want to call it. How does that work? And I'm going to say right now, it comes up really not that often as a game mechanic. And it's very, very simple. And I don't want to explain it in a slideshow because I could never explain it well enough by using a slideshow. This is why it's not part of the slideshow. Opportunity attacks and attacks of opportunity are a very silly mechanic that is still pervasive to this very day. And if I'm going to explain and demonstrate that, I need to do that with maps and miniatures because it's just too hard to just explain it and have somebody understand. Now, when you're unsure what to do in combat when it comes to complex combat mechanics, you're either going to apply an ability check, a skill check, an attack roll, or a saving throw. And the Game Master determines which one is the best option given the thing you're trying to do in battle. Because the things I've listed off is not an exhaustive list of things you could potentially do in D&D. D&D is a game where generally you should be able to try anything under the sun. And the game mechanics do not support every single action you could take. So you decide what would be the most appropriate thing. Otherwise, if you're not going to use an ability check, a skill check, an attack roll, or a saving throw, then I would allow either automatic success or automatic failure to occur. Whatever sort of makes sense. If the action somebody's trying to take in a battle really should have no chance of failure, then don't roll dice and just say it fails. Okay, if it's impossible to jump 100-foot chasm in the middle of a battle because they simply can't move far enough, and they can't produce enough force to leap across 100 feet, then don't allow it. If you think they should get automatic success because all they're going to do is climb onto a chair, okay, in the middle of a battle, don't bother making a check because climbing onto a chair is something that even you can do. So, and you are not a trained person in battle in the first place. So it should be something that they can simply do without having to roll dice. Now, I hope this was useful to you. I always try to make sure that I give you the pertinent information that you need. I hope it was useful to you. I hope I answered some of the questions you have. I want to thank you for watching and listening. I want to thank my patrons who support me on Patreon so I can keep running programs like this on YouTube, so that you can learn how to play the game, because these are designed specifically to help you jump that hurdle of learning how to play the game, whatever game it is. And today it is Dungeons & Dragons 5e. And so wherever you are in the world, please look after yourself, and hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s. Okay, I'm not gone. I am going to be jumping back and forth between my head and the battle mat, but I want to also check on chat before I do that. I am going to demonstrate the opportunity attack because, as I had just said, I do not like explaining it with a slideshow. Attacks of opportunity. I know there's going to be a lot of people who don't like the fact that I've said I think opportunity attacks are a silly mechanic. They are overly complicated. And they don't really do what they need to do, but I will still explain how it works. I do have videos on the topic, but yeah, let's have a look and see what people have to say. Hello, Fred Huber. Fred Huber's patron. Thank you for being here. Hard to hide after beans and burritos. Yeah, I suppose it would be. So Cal-Rel, explain lair actions, please. Oh, okay. All right. Okay, I think I might be able to do that. I've got most of the resources beside me. I might have to do a bit of a change around of the scene, but I can probably do something like that for you. Yep, okay. Understood. So we'll get to that. So I'm explaining lair actions. Oscar Gross, what have you got here? If you have 3 actions, can you grapple, shove, and melee attack? Yes, you can. You most certainly could. That would certainly be possible. I would suggest if you have 3 actions, you might be better off to first, grappling is probably not the thing you want to do, because if you grapple them and then you shove them, you're not really getting much of a benefit. what I've always found is there's a better way of dealing with that. So let's have a look at how having three no, when you say 3 actions, you mean not 3 actions, you mean 3 attacks. I think that's what you really mean, right? Is that. Let me just put this in and just get the questions flowing. Hashtag, please ask your questions in the chat. Okay. All right. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to shift over and demonstrate the first one. Now, CalRel, I'm going to come back to explaining layer actions because I have to change the complete scene to be able to do that. Does that make sense? All right, cool. So over here, let's have a look at making multiple attacks and using grapple shove and how that might look. Okay, so you have 3 attacks and you want to shove, grapple, attack. So this is what we're dealing with here. Okay, this is the scenario that you're dealing with. Well, the first problem you have is in any given turn, it's usually not a good idea to shove, grapple, and attack. There would be a very specific situation that would arise when that would be useful to you. So the first thing is let's go with this is our character here, and they are going to make that decision to shove and grapple and attack. If you shove a creature and successfully shove them prone, which is quite possibly what you probably want to do, you now have advantage on any attacks you make, correct? Okay, so if you have 3 attacks, the first thing you might do is you might shove somebody over. Then, as part of your movement, you spend, your 30 feet of movement. You can move 1 square, which is 5 feet, come over here. If you were there, you come over here, and now you've shoved them on the ground. You would grapple this character. They can't move away now. They can't move anywhere. So you only need 1 hand to shove somebody free, and you only need 1 hand to grapple somebody. That means as long as the sword that you've got here is a single-handed sword and not a double-handed sword, that's not going to be too much of a problem, the grapple side. Even the shove, even with a 2-handed sword, really you can say, well, I'm holding it to my side, I'm not doing an attack right now, I'm just using the other hand to push them over. But the grapple is a bit of a problem. Even though you can hold it to the side, okay, hold your great sword to the side if it's a 2-handed weapon and you don't have a single-handed weapon, you can still grapple somebody. But you wouldn't be able to follow up with making an attack. So the order becomes really important if you're dealing with it. Single-handed weapons, easy. Okay, single-handed weapons, easy. If you're wearing a shield and you have a weapon, it's going to be complicated. You can still make an attack, though, if you have a single-handed weapon and you grapple this target. Now you have to decide which target would be the most suitable one to attack, the one that is prone or the one that is grappled. Well, the grappled one can't move away if it's grappled. The one that is prone, though, you have advantage on when you make that attack. So it would be smart to make the attack against that one, wouldn't it not? And that means you just grab your modifier for your attack. Let's say it's a 5, your proficiency bonus and your strength modifier. And let's say it's a 5, and you roll 2 dice. And even though I've grappled this one, I can still attack this one as long as it's a single-handed weapon. I got a 10 and a 12, so 12 is the highest number. Add it to my 5. I get 17. And then I just compare that to my armor class, and in this case it's a 14. So the wraith has been struck, and then I roll damage. There's another way that I would suggest to you that might be more useful, because this is a very peculiar situation where you would shove, grapple, and attack. Okay? And this is where, instead of doing the grapple, let's get rid of grapple. You got 3 attacks, and one is a shove, and one is an attack. You want to shove and you want to attack. So let's just sort of backpedal a little bit and just remove this for a second. How would I go about doing that and make it useful to me? One of the most useful techniques in Dungeons & Dragons 5e is to shove a creature prone and then attack them because you get advantage if they are prone. Whereas if I just attack them as they are and do 3 attacks, I'm rolling 1 dice, not 2 dice, unless there's a way of getting advantage on those 20-sided dice. So the first thing you want to do is you want to try to shove them to the ground. So what do? You make a strength athletics check. Let's just assume that our modifier for making any kind of a shove, our strength athletics check, let's just say the modifier is the 3. So then we roll our 20-sided dice. That's the first thing we're going to do with our 3 attacks. We're going to shove. I got a 15. Okay, 15 plus 8, 15 plus 3 is 18. And then, of course, the Wraith can counter that. They can also resist it and say, let's say their modifier is a 2, and they roll a 20-sided dice, and they get a 3. Okay, so 2 and 3 is 5. I succeed. I knock the Wraith prone, provided it can be knocked prone. Is it possible to knock a thing prone? Yes, it can. Cool. So it's now prone. That means that all the attacks, the last 2 attacks that I have, are going to be with advantage, with my +5 as my bonus. That is a much better situation, to be able to make 2 attacks with advantage against the target that is prone, particularly when you have multiple attacks. There are situations where, grappling a target after you've made the attack, or grappling them before the attack and then attacking to stop them from running away would be useful as well. So, we could instead grapple that target and then make attacks, because it's not going to affect your ability to attack that target unless you have a 2-handed weapon. If you have a 2-handed weapon, grappling them is a bad idea. The shoving's not a big problem, but the grappling will be, because you have to retain your hand on them, whereas a shove can be just sort of done very quickly as part of that 6 seconds, and then your hand can be shifted to your weapon. So that's sort of one of the things to consider. Now, another great thing about the shove action is, if you shove, let's say our strength modifier or athletics check is a +3, and we roll our dice and we get a really low number, so we get like a 7. And then when we do the Wraith tries to resist the shove, so since we've got 3 attacks, and they get a really high number. They get a 2 and 16, okay, that's their modifier, and 16 is what I roll, that's 18. So actually the Wraith has got a higher check than our fighter. So that shove action that we attempted failed the first time, but we still have 2 attacks left. So you can attempt to shove again. So this time when you roll it, you get a 16, and you add 16 to your 3. Okay, that's looking pretty good. It's got a +2. I roll their dice. They get a 2. This time, 2 and 2 is 4. I now succeed on the second attempt to shove. They're now prone, and then I follow up with my attacks with having advantage using my attack bonus. This is one of the benefits. Now, even if you wind up using all 3 attacks to shove a creature onto the ground, as long as your player characters get to go first, they all get advantage as well. There's one of the benefits of ganging up on one target, push it prone, and then essentially gangbang it while it's on the ground with melee attacks until it's dead. Yes, it is a technique that all of us have probably considered. So that hopefully that answers your question with regard to the concept of using 3 attacks, not 3 actions, because you wouldn't have 3 actions, but 3 attacks, and you want to grapple, shove, and use melee attacks of some kind. Okay? Okay, cool. All right, now, I said I was also going to cover opportunity attacks. I want to do that before I start working with Oscar's asked another question, and we have the lair action, explaining lair actions. And I want to do the lair actions. As I said, I'm going to just hold off on that very quickly. Instead, I want to do the opportunity attack, because I am aware that a lot of people use the opportunity attack still, and there's a place for it. So let's sort of demonstrate what that looks like. So let's go back here, and I will just rub that out. And we have opportunity Opportunity attack. Whether you call it opportunity attack or attack of opportunity, I couldn't care less. Okay. I don't care. It doesn't matter. The two words have been changed around. One is referring to D&D 3.5 and 4E, and another one's referring to 5E. And honestly, changing the words around, I don't know why they were thinking that was important. Anyway, let's have a look and see how that works. The idea being that if you move away from a target or an enemy who is threatening you, okay, that they can attack you as a reaction. That is what the opportunity attack is. Opportunity attacks are always a reaction. You only get one reaction during your round, okay? And your reaction is usually not taken on your turn as such. Instead, what happens is you do it on somebody else's turn, okay, generally. So this is how it would look. If I decide to move away and just move away and do nothing else, I'm not disengaging, I'm not dodging, I'm just moving away from this character here who has a melee weapon, they need to be able to see me moving away. If you can't see the target and if they were invisible, you can't make an attack against them, even at disadvantage. Okay, part of the thing about D&D 5e and opportunity attacks is if you can't see the target and they move away from you, even though they were close to you, whether you're blind or you're in complete darkness or and you don't have dark vision or they're invisible, you can't make an opportunity attack. It doesn't work. Okay, so that means that casting a spell like invisibility and moving away is a very effective technique because unless they can see invisible creatures, they can't see you. Yep. Moving away means this character here, this wraith, gets to attack the fighter as soon as they try to move away. It's not here, as soon as they try to move away, as soon as you make that decision to do so. So what does that look like? Well, they make an attack using their attack bonus. In this case, it's probably going to be a long sword attack. Normally, the attack that you make when it's a opportunity attack is one of your basic attacks. It's not going to be one of your specialized special attacks. One of the things is it's usually a basic type of attack. So let's say it's the long sword. So that is a +4 for our attack bonus for our wraith. They roll 1 dice, not 2. They don't get advantage. And we get a 19. 19 plus 4 is 23. That's more than enough to hit the armor class of this character. This character's probably got an armor class of about 18 or less. Okay, so we hit the target, we roll damage. That's the gist. Now, you only get to do that once. If somebody tries to move around and would provoke another attack of opportunity, say our dwarf decides to move through the space where the character is, so this is, instead of it being a 5, it's now 10, and they go to here, 15, and then they go between 20, 25, and move away, and they're trying to go around here, around the bushes, that would provoke an attack of opportunity. But this character on that turn has already had a chance to attack somebody. So unless you have a special feature that allows you to attack, make more than one opportunity attack, which really doesn't exist in Dungeons & Dragons 5e, then you can't do it. It's as simple as that. Okay, so you only get to do that once. Now, the same thing can apply the other way. And that means that when a monster decides to flee or move away, they can also provoke attacks of opportunity. So let's assume that our wraith decides they're going to try to move around us and go after, say, our wizard that's in the back line. And they decide that they're going to pass between these two characters. They haven't actually left the range of either the fighter yet. They've moved into range of the cleric here. They've moved to here. That's 10 feet. And they're still within range of the fighter and the cleric. As soon as they move away and go after the wizard, it means the fighter and the cleric, provided they have a reaction left, can make an opportunity attack. And that opportunity attack, as I said before, is done using a melee attack of some kind. They need to be able to see the target, okay? Otherwise, it doesn't work. Very, very simple. That's the basics. What I will say about opportunity attacks, if you have ever been involved in any kind of fight, real fight, moving away from a creature, okay, doesn't make sense that it provokes attacks of opportunity. There are certain things that in a real fight would do so, but the designers of Dungeons & Dragons 5e do not actually participate in that much fighting. I think Chris Perkins does. But I can assure you that moving away from somebody in a fight actually makes it harder to hit you, and you're more likely not to be able to get the attack in the first place. But things like if you were to decide to, if you're right up close to somebody and you bend over and you pick something up off the ground, that is certainly putting yourself in a bad situation. If you have your weapon up and you're up close and you decide to drop your weapon to the ground, that would probably be a really bad thing. These are things that probably should be attacks of opportunity, potentially, or at least make it easier to make an attack, but they don't. Trying to stand up from prone, when you're prone and you're right next to somebody and you stand up, that is actually very difficult to do with a lot of training. That can be very risky, no matter how you do it. Now, I know in the movies you've seen kung fu people and karate people do what looks like simply sort of a leap as they throw their legs forward from their back and up onto their feet. Yeah, and if they do that, probably going to get kicked in the head or a sword in their belly as they come up into an upright position. But it's beside the point. This is why I think that opportunity attacks are probably not very useful to you and why I don't really cover them in the basic rules. Anyway, here we go. Next thing. Let's do, if you are behind a rock, move 5 feet and use your bonus action to cast a cantrip. Do you hide or cover your action or cover for your action to return behind the rock? Okay, I think I understand what you're trying to say here. What you're trying to do is, now here's the thing, is there, how many cantrips require you a bonus action? Unless you're a sorcerer, you probably won't be able to do something like this. Doesn't come up very often. So there are very, very few spells that are cantrips that are a bonus action. It doesn't come up very often at all. But let's assume that you've done something with your spell to make it a bonus action and it's a cantrip, okay? And you're moving around and you're trying to use cover. This is essentially your question, correct? So, bonus action, sorcerer, because it's really only going to happen with a sorcerer, and you cast a cantrip. Let's say firebolt, nice, make it simple, okay? And we'll work through your scenario and sort of demonstrate what it would look like. All right, where is my battle grid? Here we go. This is what we have here. Okay, we have a very, very niche situation. I'm assuming this came up in a game recently and you're trying to work out what to do with it and how it could play out. All right, so let's make that a thing. And I'm going to move this board out of the way because it's going to get in the way for what I want to try to do and demonstrate based off what you've given me. So you hide behind a rock. So let's assume that if you are behind this rock, you get total cover. Now you're not really hiding, but you can't be seen as long as you're behind the rock. Okay? You're behind the rock. Now let's assume that you started there, behind the rock. You move 5 feet. Say you move 5 feet, and here you now have half cover because this is a low-lying rock, okay? But you can still see the target that you're trying to fire at. And you're a sorcerer and you have a cantrip and you decide to make that cantrip, which is an action like firebolt, a bonus action by using sorcery points in one of your special abilities. Okay? That's fine. You can do that. You're all good. So you make the attack, you cast the spell, let's say it's 5 plus 20-sided dice. You make your attack against the target, get a 16 and a 5, that's 21. I hit the target. Now, even if there was cover in the way, let's say the cover is only going to be half cover. So there was only going to be a +2 applied to our wraith. Our white. Sorry, it's not a wraith, it's a white. It's a 14. So 14 plus the 2 for the cover, because we've got a person standing in front of the way. If you have a person standing in the way, that's a +2 bonus for somebody, okay? They need to get out of the way otherwise. The rocks in the way, they would also count as like half cover. It doesn't stack. Covers don't stack. So it's just a +2. So instead of a 14 to hit, I have a 16 I have to hit. That's fine. I got a 16 and a 5, that's 21. I hit the target. I roll my damage as normal, okay, for my spell. And if I'm level 1, then it's just going to be one 10-sided dice, I believe. Yes, one 10-sided dice. And I get a 9. So I do 9 fire damage to the white. But I haven't finished, because I only moved 5 feet, and this character can move 30 feet, okay? I have 25 feet left. So you can move back behind this rock if it provides total cover. And you should be. You should be moving from a position out to see clearly and then back into cover after you cast spells. Whether you're casting your spell as a bonus action or as an action, it honestly doesn't matter. What you can't do, unfortunately, and I think this is probably where you're going, is you want to use the hide action, because this is why you turned your cantrip into a bonus action, right? So at the end of moving out, casting the spell as a bonus action, moving back, you still have an action left. And what you want to do is use that action to take the hide action. Yes, you can, as long as you have cover to do so. So then you would roll your cover. So maybe you've got a +2 for your... Let's just change the dice so you don't get confused. So we've got 2 for our dexterity or our stealth check. Okay, we roll a 20-sided dice, we make the check, we get a 17, we add our 2, we get 19. Okay, we have now hidden. Wonderful. You've taken the hide action. You are now hidden from the target after you stepped out, took your shot, and moved back. Now what? Well, this means that if one of the monsters decides to actively search for you, which they probably won't because it's an action, it's going to be a lot harder for them to find you. The problem is they did at least see you move out from behind the rocks and then move back behind the rocks. So mechanically, yes, the chances are that none of the whites are going to attack you because you've hidden. And unless they decide to burn their action and take the search action and roll a perception check or an investigation check, depending on what the game master wants to use, then they're probably never going to find you. You're probably thinking, what about the passive perception, Fred? A passive perception check can be done for sure, but would still require these whites to use their action to search. A lot of people forget this. In the middle of a battle, you are occupied with other tasks. Even something like passive checks do not apply. Passive checks do not apply if you are distracted or engaged in a different activity. And hopefully that makes sense to people. I know it's really confusing. I know it's complicated. I know you're going to probably disapprove of how I've just said it. But if you read the section on adventuring and you read how passive perception interacts with doing something else, whether you're traveling or in the middle of a battle, and how the search action has been structured in Dungeons & Dragons 5e, it will become clear that often taking the hide action in a battle, if you have cover, is a complete waste of your time, unfortunately. So I think that answered your question, Oscar. If it did, great. If it didn't, you'll let me know and I'll do a better job of explaining it. Okay, let's go over. I think I've made you wait long enough to explain lair actions. So that means I'm going to clear the board. And while I'm clearing the board, I've got to find a few cards and things and shift things around. But you're going to bear with me while I do that. And I will explain a lair action. Now, I'm going to use a green dragon. I'm using a green dragon because that's what I have available close by. Otherwise, I couldn't do it. And with lair actions, I'm only going to be able to explain and demonstrate a green dragon's lair actions, if that makes sense. Now, a lair for a green dragon could be something like a pond or a lake near a river, or not near a river, near a forest. It could be a forest grove. It could be a cave in a forest. It could be all sorts of things. Okay, so lair actions. For those of you who are wondering what's going on right now, Fred is having to move and grab various resources from his supplies. Hopefully I can grab all of them and get them where I need them to be. Yeah, there's a green dragon. Okay, so I got a green dragon, and I think I'm just about ready to explain how this works. I wasn't expecting to have to explain lair actions. I did a lair actions video not long ago, so I was kind of hoping that kind of got me off the hook. Dear. Okay, and green dragon, and I need a monster manual since I don't have a card for a dragon, unfortunately. And where are we? Hang in there, people. I'm almost there. I need to take my glasses off because it's not going to work. I can't see and read with those glasses on. They are for a long distance. Okay, green, green, green. This is shadow black. There's a black dragon. That's a blue dragon. That looks like... Oh, they're green dragon. Here we go. And we want to do lair actions. Okay, here we go. This is it. I got it. Moving it across to our new scene. Here it is. This is our new scene. So one of the things you'll notice is that lair actions have initiative 20. Okay? It's initiative 20 for a lair action. The idea being that hopefully the lair action will get to go fairly soon in initiative. It's not always going to be the case, but that's essentially the idea. Okay? So on initiative roll 20, losing initiative ties. So if you have a tie with one of the player characters, then the players will go first and the lair action will go after the player. So how does this work essentially? Well, as a lair action, normally lair actions you get to do one of these per round. Okay, something that you would like to do. There are normally 3 different lair actions available to you. And you can't use the same lair action in a row. You can't have the same thing in a row. So if you decide that you really like a particular one, like in this case for a green dragon, it would be grasping roots and vines that erupt up out of the ground. You can't do that 2 times in a row or in 2 rounds, one after the other. You have to change things up and adjust things. So the first one, grasping roots and vines erupt in a 20-foot radius centered on a point on the ground that the dragon can see. So this is our dragon. Within 120 feet. So if I've got a... let's see if I've got here. See the... this here is a 20-foot radius. Okay, it's basically like fireball. I can position it right smack right there if I want to. And it's within range, within 120 feet. Okay. That area becomes difficult terrain and each creature there must succeed on a DC 15 strength saving throw or be restrained by the roots and vines. So restrained is bad. Restrained is worse than being grappled. It means you lose your movement, but you're also going to wind up with disadvantage because restrained is much worse. A creature can be freed if it or another creature takes an action to make a DC 15 strength check and succeed. So you must succeed on that strength check. Whether it's you doing it or somebody else, it doesn't matter. The roots and vines wilt away when the dragon uses the lair action again or when the dragon dies. So in other words, this thing only going to last for 1 round. So you want to target it on as many as you can. We want to force all the player characters to have to roll for that strength check. So for a strength check, say with our fighter, who has a strength of say 3, for their saving throw, let's say it's a 3, and heck, it might even be proficient as well if they're a fighter, so it would be probably more likely a 5. And you roll a 20-sided dice. I got 5 and 5 for my modifier and 13. Well, that's 18, so I succeed. So I'm not affected by it. But you could be affected, and then you would not be able to move, and you would have disadvantage on attacks. Okay, even if it is casting a spell and it's an attack roll one, it would certainly have disadvantage. So that's one of the effects you can do, but you can't do that 2 times in a row. Yep. Next, you can also use a wall of tangled brush, bristles with thorns, springs into existence on a solid surface within 120 feet of the dragon. We were in range, so that's not a problem. The wall is up to 60 feet long, and it is also 10 feet high and 5 feet thick. It blocks line of sight, so as long as it's high enough, it'll block line of sight. When the wall appears, each creature in its area must make a DC 15 dexterity saving throw. So it's a little bit different. It's not a strength check this time. It's a dexterity saving throw. That's if you place it in the space where the characters are. You don't have to do that, though. A creature that fails the save takes 18 points of damage. That's the average. Or you roll 4 8-sided dice, and that gets you your piercing damage. And you are also pushed 5 feet out of the wall space, appearing on whichever side of the wall it wants. So you would probably, I'm going to demonstrate this, people. A creature can move through the wall, albeit slowly and painfully. For every 1 foot of a creature travels through the wall, it must spend 4 feet of movement. Furthermore, a creature in the wall's space must make a DC 15 dexterity saving throw once each round as it is in contact with the wall, taking 18 points of damage on average, or you roll 4 8-sided dice worth of piercing damage on a failed save, or as half as much damage on a successful save. So there's a lot of mechanics for this one. Each 10-foot section of wall has an armor class of 5, so it's very easy to hit. It has 15 hit points, so you can cut your way through it. It is vulnerable to fire damage, so in other words, you can do double damage with fire. It is resistant to bludgeoning damage and piercing damage, but slashing damage is probably the one you want to use. And it is immune to psychic damage, so it's not going to have any... Psychic damage will have no effect. The wall sinks back into the ground when the dragon uses this lair action again, or when the dragon dies. So this one is a pervasive thing that continues to stay in effect. It doesn't just sort of last for a short period of time and it's gone. Lair action script. Oh no. Actually, the other one is when the dragon dies or it uses this lair action again. So it's exactly the same. Okay, mechanically. All right, so let's sort of see how that would look. We would probably want to put the wall right here to block this line, these characters from getting through. It would be high enough. It would force them to have to make a check. It's a dexterity check in this case. So let's say that our fighter has a dexterity of, say, 2, and they roll a 20-sided dice, and I get a 1, 3, so I fail. I'm going to be taking a lot of damage from that. Okay, how much damage? You grab 4 8-sided dice, and I think I have 4 8-sided dice hanging around. There we go. I roll that, and that's how much damage they take. Or you can take the average. It's up to you. So I rolled 7, a 1, that's 8, and 8 is 16, and then another 6 is 22. Okay, so 22 points of damage from the wall, okay, which is, of course, piercing damage because it's thorny bushes. Then they will also get pushed 5 feet back, so they can't stay in the wall. So they go. You can push them. Now, the dragon can decide to push them forward so they're blocked off from the other characters, but probably more smarter is to push them away from the wall so they're on the other side of the wall and they have to either move around the wall or go over the top of the wall or go through the wall. And that's your second layer action for your dragon. The last one, and I'm going to get rid of these bits and pieces. Sorry, people. There's a lot of stuff to move around. The last one is this. A magical fog billows around one creature the the dragon can see. So I pick the fighter in this case. Okay? So I'm going to target that one. One creature within 120 feet. Well, we're definitely within 120 feet. The creature must succeed on a DC 15 wisdom saving throw or be charmed by the dragon until initiative count 20 on the next round. So it's going to last essentially one round. And when it rolls round, it'll come back to the initiative of our lair action. Okay, so fine. So with a wisdom, let's say our wisdom bonus for our fighter is only a +1. Okay, for their saving throw, it's just a +1. And I roll my 20-sided dice. I get a 4. I fail. Well, I am now charmed. And you work with the charmed rules. Pretty simple. Okay. So all monsters that have lair actions that usually consist of 3 different things. One of them is usually an area effect. One of them is quite often going to be a saving throw, and one of them is quite often going to be an attack. Those are the general ones that you'll get. An attack roll of some kind, a saving throw, and an area effect. And they don't always have to be an area effect. Sometimes it's to be just a specific target that you get. Does that answer the question that you had on lair actions, Calrel? All I've been able to do is demonstrate the lair actions for one dragon. And you know, if that works for you, great. If it doesn't, I'm not sure what else I'm supposed to do. So anyway, how's it going, Shy X? And is it 03 Iverskew? Thanks for all your hard work. You're welcome. I sorry I ballsed up your name probably pretty badly too. Nacho man, how are you doing? Okay, next question on here that I need to work with. Oscar, you've asked. Carol, that answered your question? Okay, good. Okay. I'm going to make it clear, lair actions can be quite complicated, so you really need to sort of study up on those little buggers. The situation I had was a guard was running in a corridor. Okay. I was on a side passage. I grabbed him using a grapple, shoved him prone. Yes, fine. And then attacked him. Okay. All right. I see where the situation is. So Oscar, the next time you do this, and it's your turn and he's running down a side passage, don't grapple him. Just shove him prone, because you've kind of wasted your time. It would probably be smarter, if you really want to stop him from being able to run away, is to shove him prone and then go after him with the grapple after. If you're really worried about him running away because the attack won't work. I would always go with shove. Okay, if you really don't want him to run away and you don't think your attacks will kill him or take him out, or he will surrender, then grapple him and then make the attack. And if you have a two-handed weapon, shove him prone, and then once you've shoved him prone, make your attack, and then use your last attack to grapple. And then hopefully it succeeds. Hopefully. Okay, next. Could you attack a foe's armor and weapon in an attempt to break it? So Shy X, what you're talking about is called attacks. It's called a called attack. There are no called attacks in Dungeons and Dragons 5e unless your game master allows it. So as a player, if you want to make a called attack, and often this will be, what I want to do is I want to attempt to smash their weapon so that they can't use it. Or I want to cause so much damage to the armor I break it. Armor is designed to take damage, so you're really asking something unreasonable, and it's outside of the rules anyway. Even for homebrew, it would be quite unreasonable to expect that to be the case, because remember, armor is designed to be hit and take damage. Otherwise, why would you wear armor in the first place? And then the next thing, Shy X, I would say is breaking a weapon. Again, you're not talking about disarming somebody. You're not talking about knocking the weapon out of their hand. And there is mechanics in the game. And unfortunately, because 5e is very codified still, there are mechanics that allow you to attempt to disarm. But again, disarming somebody is something that a game master would usually, unless there's a specific rule and they're going rules as written, they would have to sort of house rule or make a ruling on. Breaking a weapon is probably again a bit of an issue. So you kind of if this was what you got to think about this, and this is an approach that I've always had when I'm using anything that's kind of outside of the staple rules of Dungeons and Dragons 5e. If I do it as a player with my character, am I happy to also have all the monsters do exactly the same thing? Pardon me, people. I have a machine. Somebody's decided to do some weed whacking, and I just give me just 2 seconds. Good Lord. All right, I'm almost done. But I knew the sound from that weed whacker was probably going to come through, and it was annoying me, and I could barely hear myself. And then I knew you would all have to deal with it as well. Okay, that's it. Done. Fixed. Sorry about that. Okay. So my approach has always been, if as a player, when I do something outside of the rules, if I do it, am I happy for my game master to also be breaking my armor with an attack? So when the monster swings their and makes their attack, how will I feel about my armor being damaged in some way so it doesn't work anymore? Or breaking, the monster swings their heavy weapon like a mace or a maul and smashes my sword in half. How am I going to feel about that? What you do is you set yourself up for a very strange dynamic. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't try everything under the sun, but you also have to consider the problems that it creates. So an example of this is the flanking rule. Flanking in Dungeons and Dragons 5e, which I'm going to demonstrate in a second, actually. I'm going to demonstrate this. Is a rule that I make optional on every fight for my players. And I always have a provisor. Remember, if we have flanking, monsters have flanking too. If you have flanking and you can flank, then so can the monsters. And you might be able to structure it in such a way and think, well, guess what? I can only see one monster here. Oh, really? Is that really what you think? Because remember, game masters can bring in additional monsters. So here is our fight. We're ready to have our battle with our dragon. And there's only one dragon. And the players will say to me, Fred, I would very much like to incorporate the flanking rules. Now, the flanking rules work like this. If you have, say, a monster like this dragon here, and you can get your fighter here in front, right there, and then your dwarf is over here, well, we're flanking. That means we get advantage. We get to roll 2 20-sided dice whenever we make our attack. We want that. That means the fighter and the cleric get to wail on the dragon. Well, that's great. But you didn't consider the possibility that other monsters might show up. And this is often going to happen to you. And that is, what happens if there's baby dragons or drakes floating around? Or even kobolds or something like that. Well, suddenly, yeah, there was just one dragon and flanking looked like a good thing. But what happens if suddenly, out of the bushes, run a whole lot of drakes, like so? And you're thinking, wow, things were looking really good for a second there, and now, hang on, there's rather a lot of those things. What's going to happen now? Problem is, flanking works to my advantage as a game master too. And so I always say, when you want to apply a rule and you think it's going to work for you, you need to consider, if it applies to me, it also applies to the monsters. I have always found that my players do not like flanking in the game, generally because of the fact that they can easily be overwhelmed themselves as little monsters come running in and start to flank them. suddenly the idea of flanking looks bad. Because we've got a little monster here and a big dragon flanking this cleric. We've got a couple of little drakes flanking here. So they're both going to get advantage. They're going to get, the big dragon gets advantage. This dragon gets advantage. It's not looking good. And if this one moves around here, then this dragon, if it makes an attack against the fighter, gets advantage. This one gets advantage. This one doesn't. Like, you just set yourself up for a horrible mess. So I always discourage people for try not to do things that you can wind up backfiring on you. You gotta think in terms of what's the spirit of the game. We still want to have an interesting fight and battle, but we don't want to set it up in such a way that really what you really were trying to do was you were trying to get an advantage, a benefit over the monsters in some way, and that's the whole point. You are trying to do that in the game. But if it could backfire on you, maybe do not suggest it. Do you know what I mean? This is why game masters will generally say no to, yes, you can make an attack against the foe or your enemy's armor or weapon and attempt to break it. It's not a very good rule to incorporate. Shy X, hopefully that answered your questions. Hello, Norok. Norok is also a patron. Thank you for being here. Got a few people here today. I'm not suggesting that you don't attempt different things in the game, because Dungeons and Dragons 5e is not as much. There's not so much codification as D&D 3.5 or 4e. 4e and 3.5 had codification coming out of ears, but you've got to be careful about the things you try to incorporate into your game that become things that you can do, because the game master can use them back. Anyway, next, Shy X, your next question. When making improvised attacks, weapons, so you're using a weapon, improvised attacks, okay, with a weapon. Now, when you say weapon, you mean like a chair or a broken bottle or something like that. Are weapon properties lost? Well, that is, again, completely determined by the game master. So vice versa. Are weapon properties applied to improvised attacks, like objects? I want to be a tavern brawler with sneak attack. So again, what you're dealing with here is a game master ruling thing. So I think what's that? Yeah, I think I can put together a scene for you and demonstrate this one. I just realised I've got a couple of things here that'll work. And look, if you've got tavern brawler, I think tavern brawler as a feat is a terrible feat myself. But let's cover tavern brawler. I don't think I've ever talked about Tavern Brawler that much, mainly because I think it's appalling. But if you want to use it, let's explain how that might sort of look. Tavern Brawler. Now, I don't have a tavern. I'm not going to lay out a tavern map or anything like that. That isn't going to happen. But I can at least give you an idea of what the situation might play out as. Okay? So I have a monk, and we've got this here, and that'll do the. Okay, all right. So we're pretty good. Let's shift over to this screen here. So let's assume that you've got the tavern brawler feat. Okay, you're going to use your tavern brawling ability in some way, and the idea being that you're trying to use some sort of improvised weapon. Something that you found around you in some way. Okay, that's really the whole point, is being able to use an improvised weapon. Now, one of the things when I was doing my martial arts is we were taught to train and use things as improvised weapons. Like in the modern age, the umbrella is an improvised weapon. So is your credit card, your car keys. I'm teaching you stuff I probably shouldn't be. Something like a hat. These are all potentially improvised weapons, okay? In a D&D or a fantasy era, there are also things that you can use. Something as simple as a rock, okay? Or a stick, or a broken bottle, or something like the chair leg off a chair can be used as an improvised weapon. As it stands right now with regard to weapon attacks, unless you are proficient with making improvised attacks, you don't get your proficiency bonus. So here is our fighter, our tavern brawler. our tavern brawler, let's assume that they have a high strength. I'm assuming you've done a monk that's high strength rather than high dex. Really shouldn't matter. It could be either one. There's your modifier, okay, for that. Great. So there's your strength modifier. Then I'm going to add my proficiency because I've got the tavern brawler feat. So that's a +2 if I'm at level 2. It's going to be +2. So that becomes 5. I get to roll my attack. And I'm going to be using, in this case, a broken bottle. I'm going to count the broken bottle as a game master. The game master decides the broken bottle in your hand that you're attacking the white with. Well, guess what? I consider that a dagger. Makes sense? It's got sharp edges on it. It's fairly small. It's a dagger. So it's going to do a dagger worth of damage. Okay, so I make my attack. I got an 11. I add my proficiency bonus and my strength modifier, which is a 5 in this case. I get 16. I hit my my white, which is only got an armor class of 14. I then roll damage. And because the game master has said, look, I'm counting your broken bottle as a weapon die of, you know, essentially a 4-sided dice, that's your dagger, you roll that. You're going to be adding your strength modifier in this case, okay, 3. But if I wasn't a strength-based monk, because a monk can make attacks with improvised weapons and unarmed strikes without having to worry about that. If my game master said, look, I consider a broken bottle like a dagger, I think it's a finessable weapon. I think it's light, it's finessable. So you can use dexterity in this case, right? So that means you get, if you have a dexterity of a modifier of 3 and you get your proficiency bonus, you're going to still have a 5. You roll your attack, it's going to look the same. Instead of adding your strength modifier, it would be your dex modifier. And if you've got a dexterity modifier of 3, then you would add that. It's going to kind of look a lot like this. So something like weapon properties can fold over into a improvised weapon. But it's completely, again, it's a ruling thing by a game master. And, you know, if you have a game master who's not open to allowing that sort of thing, if they're only going to sort of look at the weapon die and that's it, but they're not going to take or transfer over weapon properties as well, then why would you take Tavern Brawler? Unless it's just for the flavor and the feel. Does that make sense? So that's what I would have to say with regard to that. Now you've got a new question here. Well, you've got a lot of questions. Is it Andrew? Andrew, if you have struggles with how lair actions work, please tell me what your struggles are. Legendary actions, I can understand your confusion about them. I'm quite happy to go over it. I still have my dragon here, and my monster book is still fairly close, so we can cover that. That's fine. But anyway, so that's your Tavern Brawler and using improvised weapons. This is one of the reasons why I don't like Tavern Brawler, because the way that the improvised weapons attacks are written, it's really kind of left in the hands of the game master. So if I go to page, where is it? Let's find improvised weapons in this book. Just give me a second. It's in the combat area. I'm just going to take my glasses off as well. Let me find the section, and I'll read it out to you, and you'll see why I find it to be a bit of a problem. Modified 2-weapon fighting, shoving, it's cover, damage roll, stabilizing. God, it's not even that easy to find improvised attacks, if I remember right. Attacking, making attacks, modifiers, unseen, melee, opportunity, 2-weapon, grappling. God, where is it? Shoving a creature. Yeah, it's not even that easy to find the section on it. Every time I've gone looking for it, there's no like heading that says improvised attacks, because it's just not in the place you would expect it to be. Anyway, yeah. So very much a DM thing. I always find it's always sort of very dependent on your DM, that sort of thing. Anyway, Next question. Can you make an attack against a target behind full cover like a glass window? Well, the thing is, no, you can't. When you can attempt to do so, but all you're going to do is hit the glass window. So for example, if you fire a bow, or you launch a bullet from a sling, or you fire a crossbow bolt at a window and there's somebody behind the window, what's going to happen is that unless the ammunition or the thing that you're firing at the window to get the person on the other side is powerful enough, like a cannonball, okay, it's really going to have no effect. So you're classifying the glass window as total cover. It is cover, but you can still see the target, and it's not even hard cover; it's soft cover. I know the game doesn't go into this. I understand that. So your biggest problem is CalRel wants me to do legendary actions as well. I understand. Okay, we're going to be doing the dragon's coming back. So here's the problem. Chances are that a bullet is probably going to hit the window and be deflected. The full force of it will not hit the target behind the window because of the window itself. The glass breaks, okay, fine. If it's a cannonball, then that would be different. You fire at the glass window, it goes through the window, you hit the target on the other side who has full cover from the glass window. But you can still see the target. It's glass windows are a bad example of this. And then, of course, if you're firing an arrow is going to have the same problem. Once the arrow hits the window, it's probably not going to pass through the window and stay on its same trajectory. You're probably going to miss the target completely. Do you know what I mean? The arrow is probably going to get broken, even when it hits the glass window. I know it's glass, and you're thinking glass is soft and easy. It's easy to pass through. It's not that easy. Okay? If you throw a brick through a window at somebody, there's a good chance you might still hit the target as long as they're really close to the glass window. But if they're not, even the brick is probably going to get thrown off trajectory. It'll break the window, yes, it'll go through the window, go through to the other side, but it may not still hit the target where you're expecting. So, yeah, glass windows are not a good example. If you have a solid wall, you can't shoot through a solid brick wall or a wooden wall at a target unless you can smash through that wall with whatever you're firing with. So it's not going to really work. So making attacks, yeah, glass windows. I should have guessed the glass window thing should come up. It's come up in my games before. I've had this discussion with people before. I've been on the tail end and seen people doing it as a player and as a game master. It always feels like it turns into a big, huge argument. Can you arc an arrow over a wall? Well, here's the problem with arcing an arrow over the wall. Even if you did arc your arrow over the wall to hit the target on the other side, you don't know where that target is. Just because it got laid out on the battle mat, you don't actually know where they are. You can't see the target to hit the target. So now you're shooting blind. And you think, oh, but I have disadvantage if I'm shooting blind. If I can't see it, I've got disadvantage, but I can still make the attack. No, a lot of people, if I wish I had an invisible miniature, I would demonstrate this. I wish I did have one. And, frankly, I think Jeremy Crawford is partly responsible for this confusion because he does this all the time. And people just give, oh, I have an invisible miniature. Let me demonstrate this problem that we have when you can't see a target. Because I think maybe that'll become a bit more clear as to what's going on here. And then we get on to a dragon and its its legendary actions. Okay, let me just remove a few things here. And let's switch back over so I don't lose this. So let's move all of this out of the way for a second. And let's assume that we are dealing with somebody who is going to fire an arrow or launch a spell at something and you want to hit that target. If you have a really high wall in the way, suddenly there's a wall here and you are a spellcaster and you want to try to hit the wraith on the other side. And it's probably not a good example. Let's something that's lower. The drake on the other side. The drake is below the level of the wall. Your caster, okay, cannot see. So there's no line of sight to do firebolt. You can't cast firebolt on it. You have to be able to change position to be able to get into a position to do so. It's not going to work otherwise. So that's part of your problem, okay? This is line of sight sort of stuff. This is cover and how cover works. So shoot over a wall. Shoot over wall. Let's make that happen for you. Let's give you a situation where there's shooting over a wall taking place. All right. Here's our wall. Here's our target, and we want to shoot over the top. Well, first off, you need to have a weapon that can do any kind of volley shot. Do you have a weapon that has a volley shot? You're probably thinking, to do a volley shot, I can use a bow to do a volley shot, a short bow, or even a long bow. The problem is a crossbow is not really designed to do a volley shot. And a sling is not designed to do a volley shot where you shoot over the top of a wall. So the types of weapons you can use are limited. So you really need to have a bow. We have a bow now. This fella has got a bow and he wants to shoot the drake on the other side. He can't see where the drake is. He doesn't know. Just because I put it on the map doesn't mean he knows where it is. It could be here, it could be here, it could be over here. It could be there, it could be back here. He doesn't know exactly its position. So how does that work? Okay, I want to shoot over the wall to try and hit the drake on the other side. I'm pretty sure I saw it run behind the wall and it's back there somewhere. I want to shoot at it. Okay, I volley my shot up. And the Game Master says, well, roughly where do you think your arrow is going to be landing? Literally what position on the map are you targeting? You're not just going to pick because you can see the miniature, because there is no miniature for you. You're going to pick a location. I think it's about here. Okay, so what does the Game Master say? Okay, you make your shot, and if you miss, you miss. And if you hit, you still miss, because you fired at the wrong location. If you pick the right location, you say, I think it's here, and it is in fact there. When you make your shot, you're going to have disadvantage anyway. This is the only time there would be potentially a chance to hit it. When you pick and think roughly where you think it is, you've picked the right location. A lot of people get this so confused. I understand the confusion, but you've got to understand that if you don't know where it is, even if you take a shot, you're going to miss. If you pick the right location, it's still disadvantaged to make the attack roll. So I add my 5 for my bow, and I've got 11, and I've got a 7. So I get 7 and 5, add it together, I get 12, and as long as that's enough to hit the armor class of my little drake here, you might have scored a hit. But this is the problem with total cover, is shooting over a wall. I know people think, I've had people try to do it before. So that's one example of it. That's how I would rule it. I know a lot of people would assume that. Even with sharpshooter. Sharpshooter only applies to half cover and 3/4 cover. It does not apply, sharpshooter does not apply to total cover. Okay? You can't get rid of disadvantage with sharpshooter. It only, if you look at the rules for sharpshooter, it only applies to half cover and 3/4 cover. And I can find the entry in the book. Because I know I had somebody argue this point with me, Shy X. But I have sharpshooter, so even though if I pick the right position, I shouldn't have disadvantage. Unfortunately, that's not true. Because sharpshooter doesn't work that way. You might want it to work that way, but it doesn't work that way. Let me just see if I can find the entry. It's in the options section, which should be... It's acolyte, sharpshooter, feats. Oh God, where are the feats? Century feats. It It's chapter 5. 5. Let me find this. Yeah, that's equipment. Is it after equipment? It's probably after equipment. Yeah, optional. Here we go. So here, optional rules. Let's go to sharpshooter, which is on page 170. So this is what sharpshooter says in the rules. You have mastered ranged weapons and can make shots that others find impossible. You gain the following benefits. Attacking at long range doesn't impose disadvantage. So in other words, you've trained yourself to lift and fire at a longer range than other people. So that doesn't apply to our situation shooting over the wall. Your ranged weapon attacks ignore half cover and 3/4 cover. So in other words, you've trained to shoot a target with a smaller area than normal. So if there is 3/4 cover or half cover implied, then unfortunately, that won't help them. You are still going to be able to hit that target. It says nothing about total cover. And a great huge stone wall where you shoot over the top and you lob it over, sharpshooter won't help you. Now, should it help you? I'm going to tell you now that shooting at a target, because I have had to shoot at stuff before, shooting at a target that has half cover is definitely easier than shooting at a target that has 3/4 cover. But shooting at a target you can't see at all, the chances are you're never going to hit it. And no matter how much training you do, you're still not going to hit it. It's going to be a big, huge guesswork thing. So before you make the attack with a ranged weapon that you are proficient with, you can choose to take a -5 penalty to your attack roll, blah, blah, blah. This doesn't apply to that. So sharpshooter does not solve the problem of shooting over a wall when it's total cover. Shooting at a target that's got 3/4 cover because they've got an arrow slip that are hiding behind or standing behind, that's different. If somebody's standing behind a low wall that covers half their body, that's a different story for sure. But shooting over and lobbing over a wall, it's not going to help. Does that make sense? Maybe not the answer you were hoping for, but anyway. Arcing a shot is sort of another nonsense. Now, I want to do the dragon's lair actions. I will demonstrate some dragon lair actions. I also want to explain a little bit about invisible creatures, because I think invisible creatures in 5e kind of get the shaft. It is a problem that people come across all the time, right? Invisible creature. We have an invisible creature and we want to target it with an attack. And how do we do that successfully? Is there a way of making that work? And quite often there really isn't a way of making it work. So the next thing I'm doing straight after this, by the way, people, is I'm definitely going to be covering the lair, the legendary action of the green dragon. Okay. All right. So here we go. Invisible creature. You are journeying down the road. Here's your little adventuring group. And suddenly somebody launches a spell at you. Now, as soon as somebody launches a spell at you, their position is usually known. Whether they fire an arrow and they're invisible, or they launch a spell. I know that the spell came from this origin. And I'm using this hag invisible miniature as a marker. Well, I know that something got launched from there. Well, I now know that's probably the position I want to go and attack. So you go have your turn, you move over there, you make an attack, and it misses. It doesn't hit anything. Why is that? I'll tell you why. It's because your game master had their invisible hag cast a spell and they had greater invisibility on there, and then they moved their hag into the bushes. Just because I placed the miniature there doesn't mean you know it's there. Okay, it was there, it cast a spell, it moved, it went over here, it didn't even have to hide because you can't even see it. You don't know that it moved into the bushes. It could have moved into that bush. This is one of the problems with invisibility in the game, honestly. So you have this huge problem of trying to nail down where the invisible creature is. Now, I know what you're going to say, but Fred, I should be able to see the footprints in the ground. That's only if it's going to leave footprints. If if the ground is soft enough that it leaves footprints, yeah, potentially you might notice the footprints. But if it's the middle of a battle, again, do you remember that when you are searching for something and searching for footprints, unless the footprints are so obvious and it's deep snow or something like that, the chances are you're going to have to use your action to search, make a perception check to find the footprints, particularly at a road like this where there's probably not going to be that much disturbance taking place. Maybe you see the bushes and the leaves rustle over here. Okay, so maybe you can guess that they've gone into the bushes, but you don't know where in the bushes they are. This is the problem with invisible creatures. Being invisible is a big deal. Now, if you're dealing with something like, just a basic invisibility spell, when something casts a spell or makes an attack against you, they're going to become visible. They're going to appear. Okay, the spell will be broken. They're no longer invisible. Well, now you can attack them. There's not a problem. So your biggest problem is figuring out the correct position. Now, even if you decide you figured out the correct position, okay, a spell has been targeted at you, it's hit you or not hit you, whatever is the case, they have moved position and you have managed to guess, because the game master didn't place the miniature out just yet, okay, you've managed to guess, okay, I'm going to go over here and I'm guessing that it's gone in the bushes. I think it's here. If the game master actually put it there, this is the only time you would get to roll with disadvantage because you can't see it, and use your bonus for making your attack. But you still have disadvantage. That's only for a location where you actually guessed the right position. I know a lot of people say, but I can hear the creature. If you've ever been in a real fight, even when there isn't a lot of clashing of metal and a lot of shouting and screaming, I can tell you now that trying to figure out the position of somebody that you can't see is near on impossible, even with good training. And as a person who is involved in that sort of thing, I always found it really, really difficult. Now, this is house rule stuff, okay? But not what is not house rule, and if you read clearly the unseen target rules, you still have to pick the right location. And if you pick the right location, you still have a disadvantage on that attack when you make that attack, which means the chances are you're probably not going to hit that target. Do you know what I mean? Even if you do manage to pick the right location. The problem is when somebody lays out miniatures, we use our metagaming and we sort of try to circumvent that and get a benefit and bonus that we really shouldn't be getting. I've tried many, many times to explain how unseen targets work in D&D, and it's always a problem. Do creatures need to announce what spell they are casting? Okay, so first of all, one of the things you're dealing with here, and I know what you're talking about right now. I know exactly what you're getting at. A game master does not need to announce what spell they are casting. It's perfectly all right for them to announce when a game master has some of their NPCs or monsters cast a spell. They do not need to tell you what spell it is, but they do need to tell you about the dexterity saving throw that you need to make, or whether the target is going to be hit or not. That's something they will need to tell you. They might say, I need to know what your armor class is, because I made an attack roll against you. Because this spell has got an attack roll, or there's a saving throw involved. I need you to make a dexterity saving throw, or a constitution saving throw, whatever it might be. And then they need to tell you what the effect is and how many hit points you lose. The question comes up, and Shy X, I know exactly where this is coming from. It's when players decide to cast a spell, and they refuse to tell the game master what spell they are casting. You have got a real big problem at your table if you will not tell the game master what spell you are casting. So the person who's adjudicating the rules, you will not tell them what spell it is, you've got some problems. Okay? Either that or you're playing with a game master you do not trust. So why are you playing with that person? If you're a player and you cannot trust that game master, go be a game master. Okay? Go play with a different game master if you can't trust them. But you should be telling them that information. It happens to me in my own group. We have people who will refuse to tell the game master what spell they're casting. You still need to tell them, look, I'm casting a spell. Sometimes I have players who won't even tell you that they're casting a spell. They just say, I made an attack and you take 30 points of damage. And you're like, 30 points of fire damage. I'm like, what did you just do? Literally, this happens to me. It is infuriating. You've got to stop setting. This is a problem. People keep treating Dungeons and Dragons like playing chess. It's not chess. You're not playing chess. You're playing a role-playing game with hopefully people that you like playing with, who are your friends. Or if they're not your friends now, they will be in the future. I can assure you now they're never going to be your friends if you're dealing with that kind of way of operating. It's never going to happen. So let me just move that miniature out of the way and let me do the dragon thing again. So somebody was talking about legendary actions. Legendary. And I still have time, so we're going to do it. Legendary actions. For a green dragon, those are the things I will demonstrate, okay? And I think what I will do with this is I'm going to put this kind of up here out of the way. And I'm going to use some rolls, so put everything into order very quickly so that you kind of can see what's going on here. I think that's probably the best way. And then we'll go from there. So we're going to get rid of this. We don't need that one. That's just going to just sit there. So very quickly, I'm going to roll initiative for all of the characters that I'm going to use today. Okay, so we've got 4 characters. We've got a green dragon. It's got lair actions. Okay, it's got its own action for sure. We've got to imply that as well. And we've got our lair actions. So I'm not going to do the lair actions themselves, but I'm just going to put lair actions, and that's going to equal 20. Okay, very quickly. So rogue, roll 20-sided dice. So I got a 3, and my 3 to the 3 that I have here for our modifier, which is 3 and 3 is a 6. So not very high. That's all right. I'm going to roll for my wizard. I've got a 2 for my initiative modifier, so that is a 5. Yep, 5. So add 5. That's a 7. I'm getting some very low numbers here. Roll for the fighter. They got a -1, so that's not great. So I rolled a... Is that a 9? It is a 9. So 9 minus 1 is going to be 8. 9 is 8. And the cleric has got a -1 as well for their initiative. So that is a mighty 11. 11 minus 1 is 10. And then for my very, very nasty and powerful green dragon, which I've got to find the page for again. Dragon, where are you? Dragons. Sorry, people. I didn't expect I was going to be returning back to dragons quite so soon, but I guess I am. I almost feel like I have to do a session on how to run your dragon. Is that what I have to do in the future? Do I have to run a session that says how to run your dragon? Maybe that's the thing I need to do. I don't know. Maybe it is. Hello, Shiner81. How you doing? How are you doing? Okay, so let's deal with an adult green dragon. Now, an adult green dragon is normally huge. I don't have a huge miniature. I'm using a large miniature. So you're going to have to give me some slack on this one, okay? So for our adult green dragon, our initiative for that little creature is going to be a mighty 1. So it's not a 2, it's a 1 in this case. Okay, it's just the dexterity modifier, so that's all we're rolling and adding. Okay, so I rolled a 1 and a 1. Here we go. That comes to 2. So now I put everything into order. Now I just position everything. So the lair action is going to be at the top. Let's going to make that GM2. And that'll be our lair action. Okay, which I'm not actually going to use this time round. And then we go through the order of initiatives. So the cleric is going to be going first, which is quite amusing. followed by our fighter, which again is quite amusing since their initiative modifier is so low, followed by our GM. Our dragon's going to be going last. This happens to me, people. This is why my players love me game mastering, is because I roll so badly. And our wizard is got a 7, and I believe the rogue is there. So this is fighter, 7 wizard. Yep. So this is the initiative that we have here. This is the order of play. Lair action going to go first. Then cleric, fighter, wizard, rogue, dragon is going to go last. So lair action, do that. Cleric takes their action, does something, casts a spell. Okay, moves, takes an action. Fighter moves up. Okay, makes an attack, whatever that might be. Okay, does some damage, got a critical, wonderful. We won't worry about that. Wizard moves into position, casts a spell. Firebolt, whatever else. Okay, cool, wonderful. Next is the rogue. Moves into position, and there's somebody within 5 feet, so they want to do the sneak attack. Sweet, they make their sneak attack. They do their sneak attack. Great. Done that. Make an attack. Got it. Done. Sweet. Now it rolls around, and we're finally to the dragon, and the dragon gets to do something. Okay. What's this, Asa? If we don't have a problem, okay, so Asa, I'm going to come back to your question. Let me demonstrate this first. How to run your dragon would be cool. Oh, God, it looks like I might be doing that. I'll put up a poll. If enough people say I need to do it, then I'll do it. It's just, yeah, it would be a pain in the butt. Anyway, with your legendary actions, you get 3 of them. Okay, there's 3 legendary actions you can perform. And every monster who's a legendary creature has some of these. These legendary actions are not taken on your turn. They are taken on somebody else's turn. So even if the monster does something on their turn and they're at the bottom of the initiative, there was always the opportunity as I was dropping down the initiative for this monster to do something. Now, a green dragon has 3 things that they can do. Okay, they can detect something. Okay, now detect, the dragon makes a wisdom perception check. Why would they do that? It's because somebody decided to hide. It's really the reason for having that there is if, say for example, our rogue decides to take the hide action behind a rock. And we want to hide behind the rock. We don't want to be noticed. Okay, and so you want to deal with the fact that they're hiding. Okay, maybe the rogue is hiding over here in the bushes, and you want to use your legendary action to see if you can spot that they've moved over into the bushes during their turn. So you would use the detect option. I always find with a green dragon that using detect to make a wisdom perception check is almost a complete waste of your time. It really has very little benefit. Okay. Next, we have a tail attack. Now, I could have performed that when the rogue took their turn. Okay, at the end of their turn, I could have decided to use detect. So, as it reads, the dragon can make 3 legendary actions, choosing from the options below. Only 1 legendary action option can be used at a time, and only at the end of another creature's turn. So it's a reaction. The dragon regains spent legendary actions at the start of its turn. So if the rogue had moved into the bushes, at the end of that, I could have taken my detect and tried to detect where they are. Again, it's a fairly useless ability. But when the fighter took their turn, okay, as soon as the fighters moved up, made their attack, I could have potentially used that tail attack, okay, as part of that. They're now within range, and my tail attack has a reach of 15 feet. So I don't have to worry about moving. So I can swing that round and make a tail attack. The tail attack is very simple, okay? It's just 11 plus whatever your dice roll is, and you do damage, okay? So you take them at the end of somebody else's turn, one of the players' turn. So this can happen on the first round. That means that if you're using legendary actions and your monster goes last, you're probably going to be using your legendary actions first. The only time you probably won't be using legendary actions is if the monster is surprised on the first round. Then legendary actions probably wouldn't be something you use. I know this is weird. There's another thing here that you can use. Now, detecting is one legendary action, and tail attack is one legendary action. There's another one that you can use, and that is the wing attack, but that costs 2 actions to do. Okay, the last option for our dragon is the wing one. This is what it basically reads. The dragon beats its wings. Each creature within 10 feet of the dragon must succeed on a DC 19 dexterity saving throw or take 13 bludgeoning damage. That's the average. Or you roll 2 6-sided dice and you add a 6. So and essentially what that would look like is you roll 2 6-sided dice, you add that together, and you add a 6 to that as well. And that's how much damage you would do, okay, for your wing attack. And then it would knock somebody prone, potentially. The dragon then fly, the dragon can fly up to half its fly speed. So, one of the things with your wing attack, and one of the biggest problems, is getting into range. So how would I apply this? I could have applied the wing attack as soon as the cleric kind of moved up. I could have taken it on the cleric's turn. I could have waited until the wizard's turn. When the wizard had their turn, I can then position myself. Okay, since I can fly up to half my speed, which is 80 feet, I can move 40 feet. That's a lot. And the wing beats means I can kind of position myself so that anybody within 5 feet is going to be affected. So I can kind of move myself over here. Now I can affect the fighter and the cleric. Maybe not the wizard, because the wizard's kind of 15 feet away and the rogue's a little bit too far away. But now they both have to deal with the wing attack. That's how you would apply it. But it's going to use 2 of those actions up. Then I've used all of those legendary actions during somebody else's turn. I take my turn, I do my breath attack or make whatever attacks I want to with my dragon, if provided my breath attack is, if it's not charged up, you do something else. And then we go to round 2 and we go back up here. Well, my legendary actions have all renewed now. Okay, I had them to begin with. I took my turn and finished. It's a new round. We start again. And you just work your way through. And every time somebody has takes a turn and they're in the right position, then you would have them either make, use detect, use your tail attack, or use your wing attack. Your wing attack and your tail attack for a green dragon are your most useful tools. You use that more than anything else. Detect is kind of like a waste of your time. I'm hoping that kind of explains how it works. So you're always using your legendary actions on somebody else's turn, even if you're going last with your dragon or your monster. Okay. You're going to let me know if I did not explain that well enough. I don't run dragons like that. I'll make it clear, I do not run legendary actions like Wizard of the Coast does. I do it very differently, because the way legendary actions and Dungeons and Dragons operates, it sucks. It's awful. It's not a very good mechanic, unfortunately. It's got the right idea, but it's not implemented very well. Okay? All right. Next, I'm going to move through and let's take a look at Ace's question. Asa. Hi, Fred. The problem I have with combat is when it feels like it gets repetitive. I know exactly what you mean. I want to keep the players invested and entertained, even if it's just a filler battle. Great stream, like always. Well, thank you, Asa. Can you ready a legendary action? No, you really can't. Now, the reason I would say you can't is that a legendary action is already a reaction. A readied action, to ready an action, you need to have your main action. Does that make sense? Oh, I think I know what you mean now. Now I see. Yeah, there would be a circumstance where you could do that. So, okay, let me explain that, and then I'm going to do Murray Shack, also a patron. Thank you for being here. Let me explain a little bit of what you've just said with regard to reading a legendary action, because that's actually quite an interesting situation. There is the possibility of doing that. It's an odd thing to do. I have to say, it would be bizarre, because most of the time legendary actions are pretty crap. I mean, honestly, they're really bad. So let's have a look at how that might work. Imagine you go through here and you've used, a tail attack. Maybe you've done another tail attack, and then you get to your turn. And instead of doing the most sensible thing that you should do, which is to use your breath weapon or your claws or even bite them, you decide you're going to use your tail attack, or you're going to do your wing buffet. You would have to still have enough of those, because they renew at the end of, I believe they renew at the end of your turn. Okay, so once you're finished your turn, they renew after that, and you start them all over again. So this is what you would do. On your turn, you could, if you wanted, use your action to ready the wing buffet, as long as you still have two actions. The problem is you lose them as soon as we move on. It would be a really kind of a useless attempt. You could do it, but you would lose them, because you lose any previous legendary actions as soon as your turn ends. So you kind of I would say what you essentially have done is you've put yourself into this horrible position where you're losing on actions you could have taken. That is a bad thing. Because remember, as soon as you finish your turn, you would have lost those actions. You're not spending the ones you had before. If you had 2 legendary actions left from before, you're not using them. You're now pulling from the new pull that just got revitalized, and you're going back to 3. So instead of using the ones from the previous round, you're now drawing from that. That's not a good thing. That's not a good thing. So yes, technically you could, but I think it would be a foolish thing to do. Really, really foolish. How are we doing? Look, I go over how does a rogue hide so many times. Now, Asa, your question regarding how do I actually deal with combat and make it interesting. I'm going to show you what I would do in a battle like this. Okay, there are a number of things that I do to stop it getting repetitive and boring, and turning them into like a sort of just a let's just go through the motions thing, because that sucks. So if we go back to here, let's get rid of this. Imagine we have this situation here. The first thing I do when I have a situation like this is I will take my lair action. I would do the lair action, and then the players are here. And always find that if I go, oh, sorry, you're not seeing it, sorry. So here we go. Here's the battle mat. Here's the monster. You're in the battle, in the fights. You're about to do some carnage towards this beastie, okay? So this is what I would do. Take the lair action if you have a lair action, and it's the highest thing. If it's the 20, great. You get to start it. Do that. Then you have the cleric, fighter, wizard, and rogue. It honestly doesn't matter what sodding order they go in. I just tell my players, it is now the cleric, fighter, wizard, or rogue's turn, whatever their names are. Take your turns in what order you like. I could not give a shit. Okay? And what happens is the people who are fastest on their turn will take their turn first, and the slow people will wind up going last because they're taking too much time. That's usually the spellcasters, and that's usually people who do not pay attention to the rules. That means that I get through my players much faster than most people do. Instead of a full battle with a dragon taking 30 minutes to an hour, it is done and dusted in less than 5 minutes, because they know they will roll okay, I move up, I attack the dragon. Roll your dice. fine. I roll my dice. I'm doing that, Fred. Doing that. Great. Awesome. Roll that dice. I don't wait for them to tell me what they roll to hit or how much damage they do. I just say, okay, next person, I'm going to cast a spell at the dragon. Great. What is that spell? I'm going to cast Fireball. Okay, roll your dice for that and your damage as well. Do both of them. Don't tell me the numbers. I don't care. Just do it. That's what you're going to do. Rogue, I want to fire my bow at the dragon. Fine. Make an attack. And I'm going to use sneak attack because there's somebody close enough to do that. That's fine. That's cool. And then the cleric says, well, actually, I'm going to move up and use my hammer. Okay, that's fine. You can do that. Roll damage. Once they've all decided what they're doing, this is what I'm doing. Okay, now give me the numbers. I roll to attack. What's the armor class of the dragon? The armor class of the dragon's 20. Okay, well, I hit then. Great. Okay, tell me the damage. I write that down. What's the next person? Oh, I got above 20 for the armor class with my spell. Great. Tell me the damage. Tell me what you got. Yep, I got less than. I missed with my bow. Great. Cool. Moving on. I actually hit with my hammer because I got more. I got a 24 to hit. So I do some damage. Great. Tell me what it is. Then I get to my turn. Okay, and at that point, I've got rid of most of their stuff. But there's a thing that goes on every time this happens. Whoever gives me their turn, and I'm dealing with a legendary monster in particular, I don't give them 3 legendary actions. The fighter says, I made my attack, I did this much damage, and I hit the target because I got more than 20. Fine, great. And now I select either the tail attack, or the wing attack, or a bite attack, or a claw attack. As soon as they finish their turn, that's what my dragon does. It does something straight after they tell me what they do in terms of hitting or not and damage. And then the next person who had their turn was actually the wizard, okay, because they changed the order. It doesn't matter. I cast my spell, I hit it, did some fire damage, great, cool. Okay, but the dragon does this. It tries to bite the fighter again. I take another legendary action, and then the rogue decides, oh, guess what? I fired my bow, but I missed. Okay, cool. I'm going to take an action after the rogue as well, because I want the dragon to actually feel like it's dangerous. Every time they take a turn, I'm going to be using a legendary action because my monsters have as many legendary actions as there are players. If there are 4 players, there are 4 legendary actions. If there are 5 players, there are 5 legendary actions. If there are 6, there are 6 legendary actions. That's how I do it. That's how I make it exciting because it's always dynamic. We're not waiting a long time for it to do something. We're not waiting to the very end here, okay? And we're not just going to have 3 legendary actions. I do 1 for every single player. When the cleric finally takes their turn because they were a bit slow. Cool. You did your thing, great. Now I am going to use, what I will do is I won't just use the legendary actions like the tail attack, forget detect, and the wing attack. I'll use the bite and the claw, but I'll use standard actions as well, standard stuff you can do. I can take the dodge action if I want. I might decide I'm going to take the dodge action, or I'm going to take the dash action. I can use any of those things. As far as I'm concerned, I will take any of those things that can work. So I incorporate and expand out the list of legendary actions you can take in a battle. And what happens is my players at the end of a battle feel like they have actually had to do something. That the monster was not just a bag of hit points sitting there doing nothing the whole time. That's how you make your fight interesting. You break the action economy of a monster. Do not follow D&D 5e's action economy for monsters because it sucks. Because it's no good. Does that make sense? And I've run out of time. And I've got very loud, I've just realized. I've kind of been shouting into the microphone. Anyway, I've run out of time. I need to go. And I'm hoping that this has sort of answered a lot of the questions people might have had. We will be back again next week. I'll be covering magic. Okay, I'll be doing a slideshow for magic. I'll be doing some demonstration. I will demonstrate some spells. I will answer your questions. Matthew, I like the idea. Battles are more dynamic. Yes, you have to get your monsters to do more, particularly when there's one monster. Even when there's more than one monster, you have to give them more. Remember, players have bonus actions. Monsters usually don't have bonus actions. Does that make sense? And when monsters don't have bonus actions, all they're going to do is lose. And all they're going to do is get crushed like a bug. It's not even going to be interesting. My players are power gamers. They like to win, but they do not like to win easily. I have to actually make it hard. Otherwise, they get really, really bored. Anyway, that's me. I will be back dealing with Magic next week. Demonstration, answer your questions, slideshow, all that sort of stuff. Yeah. Okay, so thank you for everybody who took part in the, or watched and listened today. Thank you for being here and hanging out with me. Thank you for taking part in the poll. I do appreciate it. Do you have any questions about Dungeons & Dragons 5e? I'm hoping that the 45% of you who said yes out of the 22 votes actually asked those questions. And if you are undecided, I hope that you have decided that you are willing to ask those questions. Remember, I can only answer questions with regard to how the rules have been written. I can do a little bit of homebrew stuff, but that's sort of, how I do it and how you do it, who gives a toss. I mean, honestly, it's none of our business how you run your game as far as I'm concerned. I want to thank all of my patrons who support me so I can keep running this program, and I will continue to run this program for various systems. Right now it's 5e. I want to thank everybody in the chat: Shy X, Noroak, Matthew, Calrell, Murray Shack, Shiner81, Asu. I believe we've almost got to Nacho Man for commenting. 03 Levazagu. Oh, God, I think I got that. Oscar Gross, thank you. Fred Huber, thank you to everybody. And if I missed you, I do apologize. So wherever you are in the world, whether it be the morning, the afternoon, or the night, please look after yourself, your family, and your friends. Be nice to your neighbors. And hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s.